Hare Krishna, Prasannatma Balaram. Danda Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Danda Pranam.
So, welcome all for the Nityam Bhagavata Seva. We'll hear the nectar today from His Grace Prasannatma Balaram Prabhu, and from chapter 5, Canto 5, chapter 7, verse number 6. And chapter 7 is the activities of King Bharata. Over to you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhu. So, is my audio okay? Audio, video?
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, Hare Krishna to all the devotees, Dandas Pranams. So, we'll get started with the session for today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatam Maham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So, like Prabhu was mentioning, so we are looking at the 5th canto, chapter 7, and the verse is 6. Just started to share that. Hope you all are able to see it. So this particular verse, I'll just recite it in the prose form. Sampracharatsu nanayageshu virachitanga kriyeshva apurvam yattat kriya phalam dharmakyam pare brahmani yajna purushe sarva devata linganam mantranam atta niyama kathaya sakshat kartari para devatayam bhagavati vasudeva eva भावयामान आत्मनैपुण्य विदित कषयो हविष्व अध्वर्युभिर्गृह गृहयामानेषु स यजमानो यज्ञवाजो देवांस्तान् पुरुषावयावेष्व अभ्यद्ययात्. So the meaning or the translation of this particular verse, I just read it out. After performing the preliminaries of various sacrifices, Maharaja Bharata offered the results in the name of religion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. In other words, he performed all the yajnas for the satisfaction of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna. Maharaja Bharata thought that since the demigods were different parts of Vasudeva's body, he controls those who are explained in the Vedic mantras. By thinking in this way, Maharaja Bharata was freed from all material contamination, such as attachment, lust, and greed. When the priests were about to offer the sacrificial ingredients into the fire, Maharaja Bharata expertly understood how the offering made to different demigods was simply an offering to the different limbs of the Lord. For instance, Indra is the arm of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Surya, the sun, is his eye. Thus, Maharaja Bharata considered that the oblations offered to different demigods were actually offered unto the different limbs of Lord Vasudeva. Hare Krishna. And the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So the purport is pretty long, so I've just summarized that. So I'll go through that instead of reading it from here. So actually, Srila Prabhupada in the purport is actually nicely bringing out the aspect of why one needs to do prescribed duties. As we don't have love of Godhead, and hence there is no pure devotional service to the Lord. And then Prabhupada also brings out this point saying that Bharat Maharaja is actually a pure devotee of the Lord, but still he does this. So why does he do that? Then he says that is to set an example for the others. And then Prabhupada also mentions that he is only following instructions of the Lord, that is Lord Krishna, the instructions given in the Bhagavad Gita. And then Prabhupada mentions there how the instructions of Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayami Ma Suchaha. In this verse, everyone is actually offering obeisances to demigods. But then Bharat Maharaj is actually saying that he is giving up all of this and then he is surrendering to the Lord. Now, how to do it, in what consciousness is actually being told here, or it is being demonstrated by Bharat Maharaj. In what way one is supposed to do the yajnas, especially a devotee or a practicing devotee, in what way he or she needs to do the yajnas. So now he knows, Bharat Maharaj knows that Lord as Bhoktaram, Yajna Tapasam, he is the one who is the supreme enjoyer of all the yajnas. So one has to do yajnas only to satisfy Vishnu. So even though it may be carried out to satisfy a particular demigod, still the ultimate beneficiary is Lord Vishnu. So the Yajna Purusha is Narayana, Prabhupada mentions. So when the Yajna Purusha or Narayana is satisfied, then all the demigods are satisfied. And then Prabhupada goes on and gives this example of how when one waters the root of a tree, then the water automatically is going to all the leaves. One doesn't have to individually worry about whether the water reached a particular leaf or not. So we just water the root and then it just automatically goes to all the leaves. So this main understanding is that the demigods are part of the body of the Supreme. So even in the Purusha Sukta prayers, the same thing is mentioned, where it says that the demigods, actually the demigods, Purusha Sukta is what? They are actually demigods who are singing and then offering prayers to the Lord. So in this, very clearly, they are praying to that form of the Lord, which is indication that everything, including them, are included in the Lord. So Chandrama, Manaso, Jataha, Chaksho, Suryo, and then Indras, Chagnascha. So we see Vayur. So like all the demigod names are coming out in the Purusha Sukta prayers also. So in this way, we can understand how the demigods are actually different limbs of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada actually is giving a wonderful analogy here in the purport to explain how a person might massage the legs of a particular individual, but by serving the leg, he is actually pleasing the owner, or he is actually satisfying the owner of the leg or the body. So this way, all the demigods are different parts of the Lord, and by offering service to them, we actually serve the Lord. They are under instructions of the Lord, like the Durga Devi. So we know, I mean, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Maya dhakshena prakriti suete sacharacharam. So hetunanena kaunteya jagat vipari vartate. So there again, everybody is, Krishna is saying that Maya is carrying out her activities under my instructions. Adhyakshena, Maya adhyakshena prakriti. So Srila Prabhupada says that we should worship in that spirit and no benediction from any of them. So actually, Bharat Maharaj is not seeking any benediction. So there is no personal satisfaction, but only the satisfaction of the spiritual, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because there is no personal agenda, so actually, this particular yajna that Bharat Maharaj was doing, even though it's a karmakanda activity or a fruitive activity, which is materialistic in nature, so we know that, but then it is not materialistic anymore. The activity became spiritual with respect to Bharat Maharaj, because he kind of spiritualized a materialistic activity by having the right consciousness of understanding the position of the Supreme Lord. And then in conclusion, Prabhupada says, a devotee is always free from material contamination. He is fully situated in knowledge, and therefore his sacrifices are intended to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this way, Prabhupada concludes the wonderful purport to this wonderful shloka. So before we get started, I'll just try to cover a little bit on these. But before that, the Mangalacharan. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Supadantikam Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschayata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vas Adi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Seeking all the blessings and the mercy of all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis present here. Kindly bless me so that I'll be able to do some justice to this wonderful verse all verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam are wonderful. And I'm doing this as a seva or service to the Guru Parampara, for the pleasure of the Lordships and for my own purification. So kindly bless me so that the right words come out at the right time in the right spirit. Hare Krishna. So we are actually in this particular chapter, which is talking about the activities of Bharat Maharaj. So Bharat Maharaj in this particular verse, so we have seen like how he actually shared or he's doing a lot of activities. And in this particular verse, we are actually seeing the activities of Bharat Maharaj with respect to yajnas or sacrifices. Now, this yajnas or sacrifices to the demigods is actually a major theme with respect to Vaishnava philosophy or theology. You know, so we know. I mean, there are devatas, devas, especially in India. You know, the worship of demigods is very prominent, and then the worship of demigods as demigods is still okay. But then the problem is when one worships the demigod as the God, as the supreme personality of Godhead, or as God. That is when one carries this opinion that all gods are the same, they are all equal, so you can worship anyone. You know, and when that kind of a consciousness is prevailing, then it becomes an aparad. So that is the second aparad, even in for devotional service, which is for chanting. Then we say that to consider the all the demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva to be equal to or independent of the names of Lord Vishnu. So in this way, we should understand that it becomes an aparad when one is actually engaging in demigod worship, considering that everybody is equal. So, in fact, Hinduism, if you look at the opinion of other people, they generally think that this is a religion of many gods, so polytheism. But then Vaishnava or a practicing Vaishnava knows that Sanatana Dharma is not polytheistic. It is actually monotheistic. That means Sanatana Dharma is all about one God. That is one Supreme Lord. Of course, there are entities who are below the Supreme God, and they are, because of their position, because of their activity, many of them are classified as demigods. So, but then we'll have to understand that all of them are actually servants of the Lord. In fact, they are greater servants than the Lord when you compare to a regular jivatma. So the concept of demigod has to be understood in the right perspective, and then anything that we do will not get into the region. So when one engages in devotional service, then what happens is all material anchorings are removed. So when material desires are gone, then one no longer is tortured by the Arshad Vargas, you know, the Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. So all this is gone. And then, in fact, our progress in devotional service can be measured. I mean, internally, within ourselves, we can try to get some idea of how we are progressing based on the intensity or the reduction of the intensity of these Arshad Vargas, you know, these the thing that we have, which is the Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Madha, and then Matsarya. So when these are all reducing in their intensity, then we can understand that the mercy of the Lord is there. Thereby, I'm able to make some progress because of devotional service. And predominantly, when we talk about devotional service, we're talking about chanting. So, in fact, Krishna in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he is saying, what does he say? He says, this particular knowledge that I'm going to give you, which then he goes on to talk about the devotional service. So he says that this particular knowledge is the king among the knowledge, Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam. There he says that it is Pratyakshavagamam Dharmyam, Susukam Kartum Avyayam. So one can actually experience it personally, like in that purport or in the lectures. Prabhupada gives the example that we will know it ourselves, and then he gives this analogy of how even a small child, when he or she is crying, and then when you start feeding, and then because he's crying for hunger, but then he starts feeding the child, then hunger, the crying stops automatically because the child realizes that now my hunger is being taken care. It's not fully fed still, just that one, two morsels have started going in, but then it realizes that my hunger is going to be satisfied. So in this way, personally, one can experience. So that's what Prabhupada is saying here. He uses that analogy to say how when one does devotional service, then we can actually personally experience that it is giving me some amount of pleasure. So pratiksha vagamam dharmyam susukam avyayam. So one can directly perceive this devotional service or the effect of it. And then we actually have a practical example. Prabhupada says, like in the lecture, that he says that when we are chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, which is a devotional activity, when we say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, so we actually experience some amount of joy. So, and we don't tire out. So there are some spiritual signs of I mean, something beyond the body. So sometimes we might be tired, but then we get re-energized because of the chanting. So in this way, one can actually understand in personally, like Shikshawagamam Dharmyam. So in the same way, here also it is being told that when we are doing or involving ourselves in devotional service, then the material hankerings are removed, or it begins to um, um, like die out. It starts, the intensity becomes lesser and lesser, and then in course of time we feel some transcendental pleasure, and quickly we become purified. Now, what is being purified means? So what are we talking about? So it means that there are no material contaminations. So the material contamination, the result of material contamination is kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. So these are all the emotions that come in because of the material contamination that we have. And what is that material contamination? To think that we are this body. It starts from there. I am this body. And that is the primary cause for all our problems. So the moment this material contamination is removed, and then we become purified, then there is no hankering, and there is no so because there is no hankering, then whatever activities that we do, it will not be at the material level, so it becomes transcendental, and that is what Bharat Maharaj is actually showing here. So even in the second chapter, and then now, why is this important? Is because if we have to do devotional service, then we will have to come out of this mood of enjoyment, and the mood of enjoyment is because of this contaminated. The contamination that is there within us, which is with respect to us considering ourselves to be the body. So there, because we consider ourselves body, and then all the activities that are there, we want enjoyment for that. And that is why Krishna says in the second chapter, it is Bhogeshwarya Prasaktana Daya Bharata Chetasam. Vyavasayatmika enjoy is there, na vidhiyate. So till that, there is nothing that's going to happen. Vyavasayatmika buddhir na vidhiyate. So spiritual intelligence will not manifest in a person who's too attached to material hankerings. And that is why there is this urgent need for getting rid or reducing this material hankering. Material hankerings, if they are rid of, and then we actually get the Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. And Vyavasayatmika Buddhi is the spiritual intelligence, which then will help us to become firm in the activities that we do, which is the devotional activities. So we might do some devotional activities with some amount of desires, but then they get purified. And that is the magic that Krishna does, So he gives this benediction. He is so merciful that he purifies it. And then devotional activities, when we talk about, of course, the Navavida Bhakti is always there, but then we always start off with chanting. So when we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, or when we kirtan, or when we meditate on the Lord, or when we read the books, when we hear the katha, when we hear lectures, the kathas, and all of this, that time actually it becomes a very spiritual uh, or pleasurable activity, because at the mind level, this purification that is happening, and that is how then one actually tends to moving towards this aspect of Brahmabhuta. So the Brahmabhuta stage is what Krishna says. It's a Prasannatma stage, which is like the soul becomes very happy. Brahmabhuta Prasannatma na sochate na kankshate. So like this, and then eventually then it is Lavate Param. That means then you want to actually serve the Lord and in devotion, and thereby then attain Param by becoming my devotee. That's what Krishna is saying. And so there is definitely pleasure that is connected to devotional service, which is actually at a different plane. It is not at a material plane. But then if it has to remain in the spiritual plane, then our consciousness has to be purified. So the purification of consciousness is the understanding that we are not this body. So in this way, we can see how all of this is all connected and interconnected. So now, where is all this happening? When we are talking about all this, where are these thoughts coming, and then our understanding coming? Where is the buddhi, the Vyavasayatmika buddhi is acting, or even Bhogaishwarya, the propensity to enjoy? Where is it happening? It's all happening in the mind. So now, if you think mind as a physical entity, it is like this the battlefield, which is the mind. So there is always this battle that is happening between the propensity to enjoy, and then seeking pleasure, and then also the Vyavasayatmika buddhi, or the buddhi to follow the spiritual path. So this is a constant fight that devotees or practicing devotees are actually facing every day, day in and day out. We always have this particular problem. The mind, there are so many thoughts that keep happening. Now, if you have to step aside a little bit and then try to understand what is mind. So what is mind? Again, if you look at Bhagavad Gita, there is this particular shloka, Bhumir Apo Analo Vayu. So in that, Krishna concludes, Kam Mana Buddhir Evacha. So, and all of them are Bhinna Prakriti Ashtada. Ashtada is the 8 things, 5 gross things and 3 subtle things. So in the 3 subtle things, there is this manas, that is the mind, and then the buddhi, and then the ego, or the false ego. So all these are my separated energy, Krishna is saying. So when we say they are separated energy, what does that mean? It means that they don't have any chetana, or there is no consciousness of its own. So the mind actually doesn't have any consciousness. So they are, because they are created separately as an external energy of the Lord. And it is unlike the soul. The soul is the internal energy of the Lord, or it is coming from the internal energy of the Lord. But then the mind is actually lower. But soul, mind and buddhi of course, when we say Ashtada, all 8 of them, so not just the mind, but even the intelligence which is associated and the false ego, all of them are the external energy of the Lord. And then we actually get controlled by this external energy, the subtle body. We allow it to happen. Even though the mind is non-living, it doesn't have any consciousness. Like you can compare that to the RAM, the random access memory, or the read-only memory, whatever, in the computer. So it doesn't have any this thing of its own. But once it gets energized, when the button is pushed and then it is switched on, the laptop or the desktop or whatever, then it starts functioning. And then what does it do? It will fetch various photos or various videos, etc. In fact, the mind is also like that. If you think, it keeps on fetching images to us. The mind constantly feeds us with thoughts. The thoughts could be in the form of photos or incidences or emotions, so on and so forth. So it keeps on getting. It says, hey, to take a look at this. Why don't you look at this? Why don't you take a look at this one? This is more interesting than that. And then eventually we succumb, and then we want it. So we are constantly bombarded by these images. And then, of course, modern day, the media is always there to assist Maya in her work, keeping us in the material platform. So it keeps constantly, we are bombarded with such images. and then there's this attachment, or there's this, we succumb. So we give up, and then we want to actually we get possessed by our mind. And then, another comparison that in the lecture that I heard it was made was that mind is like a child. It says like a small child. No, you take him to the supermarket or to a mall. He's like overwhelmed. He's awed. He says like, "Give me this, give me that. I want that. I want this." He's not able to hold all of it in his hand, but still he wants more and more. It's like that, actually. So, but then when something is denied by the parent, then there is a tantrum that is being thrown by this child. We can understand that. We would have seen that, or we ourselves might have done it. Then rolling on the ground, and then crying, shouting. There is anger. So all this actually manifests. It comes out sometimes from us also as frustrations. In the way we retort when somebody is speaking, or any of these short things. Even though we try to control it, but then it comes out. So, and then it gets expressed outwardly as frustrations. But then let us understand that for the frustration to come out, there's a lot of things that are happening internally. So inside, it is all these bombardment of the images are going on. And then when we succumb, and then we are not able to take it anymore, then it comes out as frustrations. Now, why is all this happening? That is happening because of the desires that we carry. And that desire is that we carry is because of the attachment. So in the lecture, the Acharya was saying, the nature of mind is to go and then sit at a point where we want to identify with the body as it is part of the body. It is not part of the soul. It is part of Ashtada, all the 8 things. They are all ganging up against us. Us as in against me, as in soul. They're all ganged up against us, and then they are all perfectly cooperating with each other to ensure that we are tied to this material world. And then they successfully drag the soul to the low point. That is the point where we begin to think that we are this body, where it appears like the soul is contaminated. But actually, the soul is not contaminated. We know that the soul is pure. Then it appears to be contaminated because of these coverings which are there. So the covering is non-living thing. Actually, we are only energizing it. Because of the presence of the soul, the body gets energized. And then that energizing, then the RAM becomes active, and then it fetches many things. And then, the story, the rest is history. So we know what happens. So it is like the example of the cloud covering the sun. The reason for the cloud to exist is because of the sun. But then it covers the sun only, thereby rendering the sun invisible to us. And then there's some amount of darkness because of that. So like this, the soul gets covered. And then the takeaway is that we'll have to be watchful because they have ganged us against us. And then how do we understand how we need to be watchful? Is by this analogy of a snake catcher. Many of you would have seen probably on TV or directly. So when a snake catcher is catching the snake, then even though he might be talking for the video purpose or whatever, but his attention is always on the snake. He never let go of his attention on the snake because he knows that he is playing with a dangerous thing, which is the snake. So likewise, we know we are in Maya and then we are in touch with Maya, but we'll always have to be vigilant until and unless the snake is put into the basket and then the lid is covered. He never relaxes. He continues to be vigilant, and then he's trying to anticipate the move of the snake, and it is not predictable. It can strike back anytime. But then he's vigilant. He's watchful. So, in fact, even another example is the lion trainer in the circus. So when the lions are all out and then they are in the ring, he is ever vigilant. He cannot allow his attention to be diverted because he knows that one small diversion of his attention, and that's it. Anything can happen to him. He's in great danger. So his attention is there till the time the lions are all put back in the cage and the cage is closed. So likewise, we have a captured animal with us, which is Maya, and then, but then in the mind, then the mind is actually speaking to us. But it is not a person. We have to understand. It has no consciousness, like we said before, and then its function is to take us away from Krishna. It is being designed like that. Krishna tries to actually talk to us when we are living this material world. So, but then Actually, he's giving free counseling. He says like, don't go, don't do this. But then we did not agree. If we had agreed, then we would have remained there. But we did not agree. So that's why we are all here. So now that we have decided to enjoy independently, then Krishna actually agrees. He gives in because he says, okay, you want to be independent, then so be it. But then he says, then this is not the place. And then he says that you have a place for that where you can go and enjoy. And that is how then this material world got created, which we are aware of. But then there is another thing that happens. It's not that he just senses off to this material world. He senses off to the material world, and then he also takes away the memory of Krishna for us. Because we had wonderful memories of Krishna and all of that. But then he takes it away. Why? Because if we have the memory when we are here in this material world, then we will not be able to enjoy it all. I mean, is it possible for us to enjoy with the consciousness of Krishna? No. We will think, oh no, I shouldn't be doing this. Our mind will keep on going back to Krishna. So he is so merciful that he takes that away. Matasmritir jnanam apohanam cha. So that is why remembrance and forgetfulness is from Krishna. So he makes us forget. Then another thing happens. He actually grafts the subtle body onto the soul. This grafting that we do, we cut a plant and then take the shoot of one plant and then graft it to the root of another plant, that kind of a thing. So the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and false ego is kind of grafted onto the soul. So that is why the memory is gone. And then we think, then the moment we become conscious, we think that we are this body. Whatever we see ourselves, and then we think we are this body. And then the mind begins to function at that level, at the material level. Now we have to reverse this particular process. So what is the process of reversal? One is the memory of Krishna was removed. The other one is that the subtle body is grafted onto the soul. So now we have to reverse the process. So the first one is to bring back or get back the memory of Krishna. So for that, of course, Srila Prabhupada, the Acharyas, the Parampara is there. We have so much of text, so we understand who's Krishna. So this is a Sambandha Jnana that we try to cultivate. And then remembrance of Krishna begins to come back. But then just remembrance of Krishna is not enough because the subtle body is grafted onto the soul. So even though we realize certain things, we are not able to execute what we are supposed to execute in the proper consciousness, in the consciousness of Krishna, because even though the awareness is there, we are not able to bring that about because of these coverings, the covering of the mind, the covering of false ego, the covering of intelligence. So now this has to be separated, and that is what is sadhana bhakti all about. It is a process of removing something away, taking away the covering. It is like there is a film that is covering, and then we have to remove. And that is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said in Cheto Darpana Marjanam, where he said we will have to clean. So the Krishna consciousness is already in us. It is just that it is not manifesting in the way it has to manifest because of all these coverings. So we will have to train ourselves. And Krishna says, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. It's like an athlete or a sportsman. He has to train. And when he or she is training, it is very painful. Ask any athlete, they'll say, oh, it was so painful for me. Or somebody who's not even an athlete, somebody who's recovering from an injury. It's like the physiotherapy that we have to do. It is so painful because we don't get those movements back. But then we'll have to bear grit. With grit, we'll have to take that pain, that suffering that is there, so that later on, then it becomes an activity that is very easy. The movement of the hand, even a simple activity of picking up a morsel of food and then putting it in our mouth, it becomes very painful, or we are not able to do because of the injury. And then once it is healed, and then the physiotherapy starts, that is sadhana bhakti. And sadhana bhakti, there is so much of hardship. So we will have to fight against the natural tendency to associate ourselves with material nature and then continue to do that activity, even though it is not giving any pleasure or even though we may not like it. And this is the main thing. And then be always very vigilant, like the lion trainer or the snake catcher. Remove the, so that is why this aspect in the bhakti process, our acharyas have said, how we will have to develop detachment. So you can still continue an activity, but then you should be detached from it. Karmane Vadikara stays and start of that particular process where we try to give up the fruits of the labor, but then only do the labor. So this is the first steps of getting to this Yukta Vairagya stage where even though we might be associating with Maya, but then we are not possessed by it, or we are not attached to it, or we are not bound by the results. So this crafting of the subtle body, we are trying to separate it out by understanding that the soul is different and then the subtle body is different. And for this, whatever we discussed about it being non-living, all this will help us to kind of come to terms with the mind. Otherwise, we might think I am the mind, and then we'll say I am saying this, or sometimes we might think, oh, Krishna is actually speaking to me. So nothing of that sort. So, I mean, Prabhupada, there are many instances where he says, like, when I'm chanting, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing a light, or so many people come up with so many things, the tricks of the mind, And then Prabhupada used to say, don't worry about it. You continue your chanting, all this will go away. So Prabhupada is actually trying to say these are all the images that the mind is sending to you, and the mind is actually not helping you, but then it is trying to drag you back into Maya. So continue your chanting, it will go away. So in this way, we will have to understand the subtlety of the subtle body, and then which is a combination of false ego, intelligence, and the mind, of course, and then how it is actually part of the material energy, and it is always working to keep you in the material world. So it is not on your side. It is you can't trust it. We have to understand who is on our side and who is not. And when we say our side, we are talking from the soul level. So we have to be clear of this. And then we have to understand that actually the mind works diametrically opposite. So you want to come out of the material world, which is the mind of the soul, which wants to come out, but then the mind of the body or the material mind is pulling you back. And then it tells you, it gives us some wonderful images. Even when you're doing devotional service, it says how good you are, how nicely you're serving, how nicely you speak, how nicely you sing, or how nicely you cook, or how nicely you do the worship, and then all of that. It tells us internally. And then it helps you to conclude very fast how good you are or how you are better than the others. And then it also somehow makes you believe the next step is you have got a very raw deal. You shouldn't be doing all this. Your position is different. So you don't see how the trick of mind is. So it says it makes you believe that you deserve better. You deserve better than this. And in no time, your consciousness gets contaminated because all these thoughts are at a material platform. So the purification is necessary. So we have to be vigilant, like the snake charmer, the snake catcher, or the elephant, the lion trainer. And now, how do we purify the consciousness? Purification of consciousness, we all know the answer. So by chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then chanting in the right consciousness with sincerity, begging to Krishna to drive away such thoughts, because we need his mercy. The thoughts will keep coming, but then we'll have to drive them away constantly. Keep on doing. That's why Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami said, every day when you're chanting, you have to beat your mind with the shoe, and then in the morning, and then with the broom in the evening. So trying to say that you keep it in its position. Don't give too much of importance to the mind, because it is not on your side. It tries to take you away because it is programmed like that. And that is why then we actually are depending more and more on the Lord, because we cannot do this ungrafting. Ungrafting has to be done by the person who grafted it, and that is Krishna himself. So we take his help, and then we also thank him for the small gains that we see. In this way, we will be able to make some progress, or become better than the previous day. We may not be the best. It's a continuous process, but at least we endeavor or try to be better than what I was yesterday. So today becomes better than yesterday, and so on and so forth. These are all incremental changes. And then this all we can only do by actually using our senses. So this is the paradox that we have. We actually use the material body, and then Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. So that's the trick. So we use the senses, but then serve the master of the senses, which is Lord Krishna. So that's what so wonderfully our acharyas are teaching us. And then that way, then we use the mind and the sense gratification to some extent to serve the Lord, and thereby we get some spiritual benefit apart from the material benefits. And that spiritual benefit is what will take us. That's the only thing that matters. So this is one aspect that we have to be aware of. But then sometimes people might think, oh, I have been chanting for 10 plus years. So many years I'm chanting, but still I have such thoughts. Why is it so? But then 10 years is nothing when you compare to millions and millions of births, millions and millions of years where we have been conditioned or programmed in a certain way, and we've been doing that. So we were involved in this, the lecture that I was listening to, he used this word, Hiranyakashipu project. So what is this Hiranyakashipu project that we were all involved in? I am God. And then that's the project or the program of lording over the material world. I am the Lord of all that I survey. So when we've been conditioned in this way, we have enrolled full time in all these activities in these programs. So suddenly now this 10 years is not going to make a difference because the attachment was been much longer. So it takes a longer time to straighten it out. So it will take time. So we'll have to cultivate some patience. We have to be patient and not lose hope and heart, and then depend on Krishna and continue to endeavor, even though it is not giving us any pleasure at that point. In fact, it has an opposite effect. It gives us pain. It makes us tired, but still we continue. So Prabhupada is saying in one of the lectures, the function of the mind is to keep us in the material world. If you listen to it, you will remain here only, means in the material world. So destroy the subtle body using the intelligence or the Vyavasayatmik Buddhi that Krishna is talking about. But then the karmis are very happy with their minds. That is why karmis are very happy with their mind. In my mind, I feel like this. You can make out people put too much of emphasis on the mind. In my mind, I think it is like this. I feel like this. I think this is better. I think. So many things where keep on saying, I think. So we'll have to get out of that and then say that we take the support of the Shastras, we take the support of the Acharyas, what they have said, of the Guru, what he has said. So from Pratyaksha Jnana, we move on to what is that Jnana called? Paroksha Jnana. Paroksha is the intelligence that is coming from the Guru or the knowledge that is coming. So we accept that as the truth. And then from Paroksha, then we go to Aparoksha, and then from Aparoksha, then you go to Adhokshaja, and then Aprakata. So these are all various stages in which the mind becomes purified of the material contamination, and then Vyavasayatmaka Buddhi takes over and then helps us to get to this point of prakata knowledge, which is actually where one is able to see the leelas of the Lord, you just close your mind and then you are seeing it as a movie, like all the Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, the Shad Goswamis especially, they were all in that form of a prakata, and then Vyasadeva, when he wrote all these things, he was able to see all of it, and then he just wrote the Puranas and all of that. So like that is the final stage, the destination. But then we should understand where we are now, which is Pratyaksha. We depend too much on our own senses, senses, and we want to see. Seeing is believing kind of a situation we are in. From there, then we move on with these various stages that I spoke of, which is that in itself is a very in-depth discussion. So we'll keep it for another time. But then from Pratyaksha, then you go to Paroksha, and then Aparoksha, and then Adhokshaja, and then finally the Prakata, which means it is not manifest, but then it is manifest in the mind. So this way we will know. But then we have to understand that modern day, the theme is that everything is made enjoyable, the material things. So this is one more thing we should be aware of, which is if you notice a little more in detail what is happening in the material world, the aspect of guilt is being removed. So they say you don't have to be guilty about anything. You can do. So they encourage you to make mistakes or make aparads or to sin. So with respect to the four principles, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit relationship, no meat eating. But then if you look at the modern world, they are actually advertising all of this. And then they are saying it is good to sin in all these ways. So in terms of intoxication, they are trying to remove that guilt from you. Oh, everybody is doing. Oh, it's the most natural thing. It is a normal thing. You see, you do this, you are happy. So they try in various ways. They have become, they are assisting Maya in helping us keep there by all these intoxications and then trying to trivialize it, even illicit relationships. The guilt factor is being removed by talking about it openly, or it becomes an an achievement kind of a thing when people brag about it and that sort of a thing. And that's what we see, especially with the youth and all of that. And then there's some people take great pleasure by saying that they don't eat any vegetarian food. they use this word, ghas poos nahi khate hain hum. Like, I'm a very elevated person. I don't touch all these things. Sher kabhi ghas nahi khata. They try to. There's so much of that guilt aspect is removed. Whereas few decades before, people were guilty about doing this activity. Not that these things were not happening. It used to happen, but then the guilt factor was there. So this guilt factor is a very important aspect that we have to understand, because guilt is what is actually leading to prayashchit, leading to correction, leading to us recovering. But then if you remove this off, then where is the question of self-correction? Where is the question of transformation happening? Nothing is going to happen. So it becomes that much more difficult for the transformation to happen. So this is a very dangerous situation that we will have to be aware of. In fact, we don't even know why these things should not be done. In fact, we just try to preach. We say, oh, no, no, those are sinful activities. Don't do it. Somebody asks why I shouldn't do. We don't have an answer. But then Prabhupada or in Sanatan Dharma, so clearly it says, oh, you can do it, but then you are just making sure that you continue to remain in the material world. And then the many births that you have to take, and then the suffering that is associated with this. So in this way, if it is explained to a normal person with normal intelligence, he or she will be able to grasp the importance of it. And then in their mind, they will have this determination to come out of it. Like they get inspired and then they want to come out of it. Oh, I no more of all this. So it doesn't take high IQ to realize suffering that is there, because this world is dukhalaya. So there is a lot of suffering, but then it is not being looked in the proper perspective. We are being misled by various things, so we are not able to see it. That is the general position of the people outside. So that is why then we will have to read and understand, and then educate people, and then educate them in terms of how the four activities, and then the guilt. In fact, the acharyas say that we should feel ashamed when we are enjoying something materially. Some amount of guilt should be there. We should feel ashamed. We shouldn't think too highly of it. Okay, sometimes we are practicing Krishna consciousness, so we're doing devotional service, but there are certain pleasures that we might yield to. But then that again, there should be some amount of shame that is there, which will be the foothold for us to raise further. If that is not there, then it's like a wall without any foothold. So we just remain. There's no chance for us to climb out of it. So being ashamed, feeling bad, and then pray when we see such things, and then pray to Krishna saying that, oh, this is, please turn my mind away from this. Never, I mean, I don't want this, but then I'm conditioned in this way. So Lord, please help me. So dependency of the Lord increases. And then another thing is ensuring that we don't give any free time. So when we have free time, then all this keeps coming, right? So not having any free time, completely occupying our pre-conscious time in activities which are devotional in nature. So that way, in fact, Prabhupada made that only for all his followers. So he packed them up from morning till evening so wonderfully that they didn't have any time, and then they were tired out in the night, and then after food, they just want to sleep. The moment they hit the bed, and then close their eyes, they are in sleep. And then again, next day morning, then get up, and then the whole thing repeats. And there is no weekly off or anything. So continuously, distribution, teaching. So distribution is an humbling experience. Teaching might be an ego boosting experience, but then when both are done together, then it keeps that balance there. So Prabhupada gave us everything so perfectly, just that we've not realized it, or at least I have not realized it still. But then we have everything there, all the ingredients are there, just that we need to make it up. And then we also have to understand in terms of humility that the Lord is not waiting for our seva or our bhoga or our arati or our singing or anything. He has millions and millions of attendees who are serving much more better way than we can even think or imagine. So when all that is happening, but still he is not looking for these items. What he is actually looking for, it is the bhava or the mood or the consciousness in which it is done. So that is why he is Bhava Grahi Janardana. So why does he even have to look at us? I mean, that's the way in which we will have to see. I'm such a fallen soul. I've had so much of hankerings, so much of desires, and in my mind, so many nonsense keeps happening. I'm in no way eligible to do anything or even approach the Lord in any way. So in this way, we become a little humble, we become ashamed, and then we feel bad about certain things. So that way, then our mind becomes purified, because any of those opposites are not a good thing for us, because then it will actually bind us to the body. So this is like, so we just endeavor. When we are endeavoring, then we get some grace marks. What is this endeavor? It is like a student, writing some question, some 10-mark question he is filled up. No, some 2-3 mark question he is filled up some 4 pages. But then what he has written is all wrong. But still the examiner sees, oh, he has taken so much of trouble to write, and then he has read something. Okay, some few things here and there are right. So let me give some grace marks. And then he gives some marks. So that is how our progress in devotional services. We get some grace marks here and there, and then we try to better it still, and then constantly endeavor, and then take it forward. So that is mercy. So we don't deserve it, but then we have got it. So there is no love from our side. We're not doing it with any love. But from our side, which attracts him to us, the Lord to us. It's only our effort, and that effort also is full of mistakes. But still, I mean, at the beginning, it is done for my pleasure. No, I like to sing, so I will do that. No, I like to do this, I'll do that. So even though our liking is a major factor which determines that particular service, but still we get some brownie points, or we get some grace marks. So from there, then we move on to the stage where we just do for the pleasure of Krishna, not for my own pleasure, and then so on and so forth. So this becomes a very important aspect for us. And in this way, when we are doing Navavidha Bhakti, then hearing and chanting and remembering the Lord, then one gets recognized by Krishna. And then the recognition of Krishna is that Ananda. It is the reduction in the attachment. It is the reduction in the intensity of Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. All these are indicators which tell us that I am in the right path. So that because this path is Pratyaksha Dharmyam. Sometimes we might think, is it good to think like that? Yeah, it is good to indulge in. It is not good to indulge in it. But then some understanding is needed, because Krishna himself has said it is Pratyaksha Dharmyam. You can feel it yourself. And in that aspect, then we can know. But then we should always be vigilant, like a snake charmer or the snake catcher, who never lets his eyes off, who doesn't relax even for a minute, because he knows that he is handling a danger, which is the snake. And we are also in Maya, so it's very dangerous. It is always working against us to pull us down. Then we have to be ever vigilant. And Bharat Maharaj displayed this particular character, even though he was connected with Karmakanda activity, fruitive activity, but he spiritualized it. How did he spiritualize it? With the right consciousness, by understanding the position of the demigods. Thereby, there was no aparadh committed to the demigod, nor was there any fruitive activity that he did, because there was no karmakanda activity, because he didn't want anything by that sacrifice. So he didn't want anything for himself. It is mentioned, Prabhupada mentions that. And then he did not offend anybody, because he was directly thinking each one of them as a limb of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he was seeing them in relation to Krishna, in relation to Vishnu. And that consciousness actually elevated him or purified him from the material hankerings. And the yajnas that he did were actually spiritual in nature and not material. So this is a wonderful demonstration of how, because sometimes even we have certain things like, some Ganesh puja we might have to do. And then, we are because my family has always been observing this. How do I now do? Because I'm now doing consciousness. So in initial days, we might ignore, or we might say, I won't do this and all that. But that's all not correct again, because they are all, again, parts of the body of the Supreme Lord. So with this understanding, when we are, in an inevitable situation, when we have to carry out certain things, we neither hate it nor like it. And then we know that it is all connected to Krishna, and then we do it in a matter of fact way, without any physical hankerings, or without any physical prayers that you give me this, dan dehi, danam dehi. That's not the kind of yajna that we are performing, but then we just perform it as Bhuktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvalokameshwaram. So he is the Supreme Lord, and my duty is to serve, and then I do this yajna so that it is for his pleasure. And then surrender completely in this way. At least at the consciousness level, we'll try to cultivate that. It may not come so often, but in this, we can see Bharat Maharaj is wonderfully demonstrating that. So it's definitely a thought that we should always carry in our mind, and then try to make some advance in Krishna consciousness by continuously doing devotional service in the right consciousness. with some shame, with some, not good feeling, not being proud in any way, but then in a very humble way. So on this note, I'll stop here. It's almost time. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on the mind, and then the nature of the mind, and then how Bharat Maharaj, in his consciousness, he was able to purify even a karma kanda activity into a spiritual activity. Stop here. If there are any comments, questions, or anything that needs to be corrected, please go ahead. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the wonderful class in the morning. I'll just unmute the lines so the devotees can share their thoughts and inputs and questions, if any. Hare Krishna. I've unmuted lines. Can devotee just confirm? Can somebody go ahead and speak?
Unmuted.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I don't have any doubts. You are so clear and giving so many examples you explain. And the whole of part of chapter 5 and chapter 6, you have briefed us very nicely, Prabhu. Dandot Pranam for the excellent class today, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji,
I was repeating what I heard, that's all.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Prabhuji,
Prabhu, you're saying something.
Say a small doubt, doubt in the sense of clarification, or maybe an expansion of what Prabhupada has mentioned. In the purport of this particular verse, Prabhupada nicely concludes where he makes the statement that a devotee is the last two lines. A devotee is always free from material contamination. Then he says he is fully situated in knowledge, and then therefore it is always for the satisfaction sacrifice. How do we get a more understanding about he is fully situated? What does it mean, Prabhuji, is fully situated? How do we understand that?
If you look at, he's fully situated in knowledge. So this is the right knowledge, no? The Sambandha Jnana. So Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane, Gavihastine, Sunicheva Supakena, Pandita Samadarshina. You become a Samadarshi, and then you realize your position, so you become humble. All these qualities manifest when we are situated in the right knowledge. So when one is fully situated in the knowledge means, the way I understand it is not contaminated with any other kind of knowledge. The knowledge of karmakanda activity, the knowledge about the body, or about how to go about doing things. But then it's only that Sambandha Jnana, so which is pure in its stage, and then only that is there. It is like single-minded focus, they say, right? What is that? Ekeha Kuru Nandana, yes. So that is the kind of understanding that comes out when we read this. He's fully situated in knowledge, and that knowledge is complete. So there's only that Sambandha Jnana. No? So we know ourselves, we know the position of the Lord, and we know the position of all the others. So in this way, we are situated there always, and not allow the false ego and other avyavasayatmika buddhi to come in. It's not contaminated by avyavasayatmika buddhi, but only vyavasayatmika buddhi. Then, therefore, whatever we do, it is only for the intention or satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. It is like, if you have to give a material example, the mother is fully situated in the knowledge of her child, we can say, especially in that growing years. Whatever she does, she is always thinking of the child, or how it will affect the child, or if I do this, then how it will favor the child, or if I don't do this, how it will affect the child. So everything around that, even talking to the neighbor, oh, maybe I'm talking too much now, I have to get back because I've ignored the child for long. So it's that child consciousness, so fully situated in the knowledge of the child, which was not there for that lady before the birth, but then it came about later on, So like that, it just gives us an idea of how fully situated means. Where we are 100% dedicated to that person, and thereby all activities are kind of dovetailed to ensure that there is satisfaction for that entity. And then in this case, of course, if you apply it spiritually, then it is for the Lord. It's my 2 cents. I don't know if I answered you.
Thank you. No, thank you, Prabhuji. You have brought out multiple aspects of that word being situated. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Any other questions, comments, or inputs? I think there are none, Prabhu. So we'll end here with the Vaishnava pranams from you.
Yes.
Vansha,
Vancha,
kalpatarubyascha,
Satyasya,
kripa
Kripa, Sindhubhya, Vacha, Patitanam,
Padita.
Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gurudev Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Gaur Sitanath
Thank you once
Parmanande, Hari
again.
Hari.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, once again. I'll close the call now and we meet again tomorrow morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.